Welcome back to the Hall of Fame College Football Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Watkins. And if you love college football, you're definitely in the right place. So before you forget, smash that red subscriber button, like our videos, and don't forget to ring the bell so you don't miss one moment of the Hall of Fame College Football Podcast. Folks, I'd like to apologize. It's been a long day today. I just decided to go ahead and jump on anyway, talk about a few things. I figured we would talk a little bit about this, expected schedule as far as the SEC is concerned for Oklahoma. There is always talk to be had about the continuing propaganda war going on between the Pac-12. They're throwing a lot of propaganda out there, and the Big 12. But also just thought I'd let you guys go ahead and kind of say whatever any kind of stuff you want to. I definitely didn't want to make you continue watching Gold and Blue do their Hank. Sorry about that. Annual non-conference. Let's meme it into existence. Hey, I like this idea. I actually saw that earlier on the thread. I didn't get a chance to say anything back, but I like this idea. I think they should play every year. I don't know that. It seems like Matt Rule would probably want to do such a thing. I would think so. I don't see why BV wouldn't want to. So I like it. I like this. Yeah. So obviously, the last couple of videos out there, the last few days, we've talked a lot about obviously right now, the continuing story is always going to be concerning. Hey, there's Laura too. What's going to happen with the Pac-12, Big 12, and then the ACC is obviously it's still a long ways out, but it seems like there might be some movement there. Just kind of wanted to, let's talk a little bit about that first. We get that out of the way and kind of then we can just kind of talk OU and the future for OU and some of these other ones. But I was watching a little bit earlier once I got back to the house. You had the Andy Staples show, and it's basically an athletic show from The Athletic where they're talking a lot about it seemed like the entire premise of the show was how the Big 12 and corners of Big 12 media is out there doing the best that it can do to destabilize the Pac-12. I don't think that George Kliavkoff and the Pac-12 needs any help in destabilizing, just to be honest with you. I feel like you have your little mouthpieces and stuff out there coming from John Canzano, John Wilner. These are guys that are supposed to be trusted journalists. And it's all BS. Everything that they put out there is just a bunch of crap. I don't know that Canzano's said anything that is meaningful since last year at any point. He was talking about that there was going to be a deal at some point, like right after Labor Day in September of last year, that they had a deal ready to go and all this kind of stuff. And like, we're just supposed to forget all of this, that everything that you say, none of this crap comes to fruition. So, the last thing that I saw that he had put out there was something along the lines of that they were still estimating well above the $31.6 million that the Big 12 is getting as a base number for its new media deal starting in 2025. I think it's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of. You're talking about there's nobody out there that's just going to overpay for something that nobody else wants. ESPN's made it abundantly clear with everyone. The only people out there saying these stupid things are Wilner, Canzano, guys like that, because ESPN's made it abundantly clear that they want nothing to do with this. Yes, very much so. They are only going to do one game a week on their stations. The rest of it is going to be driven by streaming. And let's just assume that They have a new deal and they're stable, but still acting like they have to get more teams. Right. I don't think that. Yeah, let me put a pin in that one and I'll come right back to it. Let's just assume though for a second that they do get some kind of deal that's somewhere in the neighborhood, right? But obviously, here's the deal. Even if they were to say get high on TV, which that was one of the funniest ones, yeah, to me. Maybe there was some talk out there, and I know they've got some placement in certain places. But what I would tell what I would ask everybody is, okay, let's just say that happens, right? You get some kind of deal, and for the time being, you're able to pull this conference together. Now, I'll tell you in a second that I mean, I was watching Locked On Big 12 just a few minutes ago as I was coming in, and they had Michael Luke from Locked On Arizona Wildcats. And everything that he was saying was that Arizona's like ready to go, right? And if Arizona goes, then Arizona State goes, or vice versa too. The reason being is, what is to stop Oregon, Washington from jumping to the Big Ten as soon as the Big Ten decides to invite? And then what? I mean, when that happens, then you're in a position where what do you do? Because if you haven't already jumped, and I'll tell you another thing, you think that Colorado hired Coach Prime so that they could stick him on streaming and call it a day? I don't buy it. I just don't buy it. I mean, it doesn't take, and I don't care what propaganda gets thrown out there or whatever. You can say all these things, but some of it has to add up. Two and two eventually has to mean four. It's bottom line. It has to do it. You have to add up with all this crap that you're throwing out there, and everything that you see on Twitter, everything that you see all over YouTube, from like I said in that Staples show, all you keep hearing is he said, we all know that there's been stuff planted strictly to destabilize the Pac-12. That is an absolute. That is coming directly from the office of George Kliavkoff. It sounds exactly like what he said last year when he was saying that, I've been defending against grenades being lobbed from every corner of the Big 12 to destabilize. And I wish that at one point they would have ever said any of these things towards Warren and the Big Ten, who actually destabilized your conference. Or maybe you could say, you know what, maybe we should have added those Big 12 schools like Texas Tech and Baylor and TCU, who was in the national championship game this season, Oklahoma State, any number of them, and you could have finished off the Big 12 if that was the case. You could have. Or, instead of, calling it the flyover or truck stop league, maybe you should have decided to, well, once it got bad and USC and UCLA decided to leave, maybe we should go ahead and merge for the safety of the conference so that you don't lose everything to the SEC and to the Big Ten. Because eventually you're going to lose them all to those two. Yeah, they are. Yeah, it's exactly right. When none of them are, look, Fox jumped out of this deal a long time ago. And a lot of that, what a lot of that had to do with, Hank, was the fact that they were bitching and mad at Fox about them not telling them or whatever they thought they didn't know about Kevin Warren stabbing him in the back like that after the handshake deal that they had. Those guys hang out together for 3 days and then they walk away with a handshake deal. If you go and you meet with somebody for 3 days and then all of a sudden, or 2 days or whatever it was, if you go do that and then the only thing you get out of that is a handshake deal, are you not preparing for the next freaking round of realignment and what's about to happen because they're full of crap? I know I would be. I know I would be. Yeah. And listen, you guys are exactly right on this. And this is where we're at. Okay. I just don't get what the Big 12. Here's the deal. They do need to add some of these schools, right? It's as I said, I feel like because of the fact of Coach Prime and Colorado having been a Big 12, I mean, that was the only time they were really relevant in athletics was when they were Big 8, Big 12, right? Um, the four corner schools are big. And the reason for that is because of the fact that, like I said, the only thing that Oregon and Washington are waiting on is that invitation. And it's going to get there at some point. It has to. It just has to, because again, they don't want to stick UCLA and USC out on an island out there and not have them anybody to play. Now they can always go get Stanford and Cal. That's fine for their AAU, all that stuff, and their academic stuff. And it helps with that research money, by the way, is a lot more money than what they're going to get as far as the television deal is concerned. What I'm going to tell you again on that, the one thing doesn't have anything to do with the other. So all this stuff that you continue to hear from some of those morons out there in Utah that, it's going to screw up their AAU deal. It's not. It isn't. You're already in the club, folks. You're already in the club. And where your football team plays on Saturdays in the fall doesn't really matter. Not to them. They're not watching that crap anyway. Okay. Let's see what James is saying here. I do think that the Big 12 has been leaking a few things, like talking to Colorado. Yeah, I mean, I think that the Big 12 is now in the driver's seat, and yeah, maybe they are a little bit. I mean, it's clear who isn't in over their freaking head completely, and that's the whole deal. That with Kliavkoff, Wilner, Canzano, all those guys are not capable of altogether coming up with a plan that is doing anything to Brett Yormark. And I'll tell you, I've been saying this for a while. If Brett Yormark is around 5 years ago, the Big 12 stays together. You don't see Oklahoma and Texas leaving. You don't. Things are going to change around there, and I feel like even over the long term, you're going to see the Big 12 is going to remain relevant in some way. Is it going to be the SEC and the Big 10? Of course it isn't. Okay? They've got the power brands when it comes to college football that there's no way you're catching up. And you're not going to get those ACC schools that are going to end up eventually leaving whenever that happens. They're going to end up in one of those two conferences as well. When you talk about North Carolina, Miami, Clemson, Florida State, right? That stuff isn't going to happen. As far as the four corners is probably going to happen. What'd you say? Fox works for Fox, and the Pac is led by fools. Yeah, the Pac has been led by fools, and that's the other thing is all this. There's no doubt that Larry Scott was a buffoon, and he chased that idea of kind of the same thing that you saw Texas doing with the Longhorn Network, that they could like completely take over their own production and be their own, billion-dollar channel on their own. Well, the Pac-12 network is trash, even more so than is the Longhorn Network, and I think everybody will be just excited once. I think the people in Austin are going to be excited once that thing is buried, But same thing with now the Pac-12 is looking at, that's the other thing, and I've talked about this, is that, okay, it's probably a good thing that they have all that network ability because of the fact that who the hell is going to produce all your stuff? Who's going to do it? Who's going to send the trucks out there? Who's going to film all this stuff and put it on live? You're going to have to pay. So whatever your media deal is, and then nobody's talking about this, but who are you going to pay to come in and actually produce the live broadcasts, whether they're on linear television or on a streaming service? Who's going to do it? Because Amazon doesn't have that. They don't have the ability to do that. Neither does Apple. They're going to have to go out there and get somebody to do it for them. Right? ESPN, CBS, Fox, somebody. And guess what? That money, it's going to cost money to do that. And where do you think, if it's Apple that's involved in this, you can bet your butt that they're going to charge all that right back to the conference. So whatever your supposed bottom line is way less now. Okay, it's way less. So they're saying Pac-12, the Pac is going to be gathering in Vegas next week. Obviously, they got the conference tournament out there. Expect to see them banding together kind of stuff. I mean, I'm sure you're going to hear that, a lot of that kind of stuff. Something that I saw on the Andy Staples show, Max Olson from the Athletic, and you see a lot of stuff coming from him. I think he's pretty good. But even he is doing this, both sides telling a very different story. Well, of course they are, but because it's the truth of it is that there's just no if you're telling any story, if you're telling the Pac-12 story, you're just regurgitating a bunch of crap. It's all propaganda. Okay? Because in the end, and that's where I feel like if everybody just comes back to center and talks truth, then all you can say is, okay, if they hold together for another 3, 4, 5 years, which I don't even think that you could do that, but let's just say that you get all these members of the Pac-12 to decide to do that. And let's say they add SMU and San Diego State, which they, even on that show, admitted would be dilutive of the Pac-12 media deal, not additive. And what do you hear Brett Yormark saying? We're not going to add teams unless they're additive, right? There's talk out there about Gonzaga going to be coming into the conference. That is definitely additive when you start. It's an additive when you start talking basketball, right? It's definitely an additive. Is it going to be, they're not going to come in for the same amount of money, though. There's no way that you can do that. But Yormark is trying to position the conference in a way that he wants to try to pull the basketball separate in the next time that they get to their media contract. They want to separate out the basketball side of things, get paid on that, which is I think that's one of the smartest ideas. I don't know why nobody else is doing it, right? Or I don't know why they haven't already done. Yeah, the big noon. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Look, but here's the thing. If you're getting 100 million, then you can deal with that, right? If you're a Pac-12 school looking at that, well, we can stay and go for 22 million is one of the last things I've heard, and all streaming, or, we can be on television. Either way, it's going to be, and we get 100 million for it to be in the Big Ten. It's kind of one of those things that you would definitely want to do. That being said, again, that's what I'm getting at is that guaranteed they are waiting for the second that they get that invitation. Phil Knight has been talking about bankrolling the move for them so that it doesn't cost anything, basically, of the Big Ten. And they're not going to get an equal share, but let's say they're definitely going to get a hell of a lot more than what they're going to get by staying in the Pac or even probably going into the Big 12. It's smart for them to do that. And then the same with, I don't think that Stanford cares if they ever play sports again. Their new football coach was talking about not doing NIL whatsoever. They're just not playing that game. Not doing it. Because it just doesn't matter out there like that. Why do you think they had to get a new coach? I mean, everybody forgets about that, about the coach that they had, like he was just a nobody. I mean, they were good. They were real good. So, yeah, in the end, even on that show, like I said, Max Olson saying, Yormark, no matter what the Pac-12 does, is trying to convince the four corner schools that they are better off in the Big 12, and he has a better vision than the Pac-12 does. What? You don't need to convince anybody. That's clear. He's already done the convincing. You think he's got to stay on the phone with those presidents from the Pac-12? BS. From the four corners, particularly? You think what, they can't see? They can't see the difference in what's happening? He's not on the phone all the time with them. I think that there has been talks about it. I think that's obvious that there's been talk out there, that they've been in communication. Yeah, uh, they could probably, and because they have a $20 billion endowment. Notre Dame can stand alone. The only thing that's going to make Notre Dame join a conference is if they make a rule that says if you don't get in one, you can't play in the playoff. That's the only thing that's going to change things at Notre Dame. They do not want to, first and foremost, they don't want to join the Big Ten. They tried to join the Big Ten years ago. The anti-Catholic stuff coming from Michigan, a lot of these other schools within the Big Ten, they hate the Big Ten. I would almost bet you that they end up in the SEC before they end up in the Big Ten. I truly believe that. Yeah, but okay, Hank, and I would agree that these are non-starter though deals right here. If he could talk to Tulane and do kind of stuff like that, Tulane's fine. None of these schools are adding or moving that needle. So if you do that, then that is going to come out of the remaining Big 12 schools' money, right? Tulane is not a Power 5 school. So ESPN's not going to pay any of their money. Just like they really don't have to with Gonzaga. My guess is you'll probably get the ESPN money on Gonzaga just because of the fact that they're a power in basketball, right? They're always going to be. That's what they are. That's the only reason they're even looking at them. But as far as these other SMU, SDSU, Fresno State, Boise, none of these teams move the needle enough for Texas Tech or Baylor or Oklahoma State to say, sure, we'll, carve out a little piece of our pie to bring them in, or and you got to bring in two if you're going to bring in one, right? You can't have that. It'll mess up I know obviously with Gonzaga, but I don't think that one's over yet either. Okay. Yeah. So Tulane benefiting the conference for recruiting blue. Kinda. But is it? How many of those are they competing with LSU for players? No, they're not. They're not. If that's not a competition. So I don't see that. And what I would say, if you're going to say that, then yes, okay, then that's when you would want to go San Diego State first, because there really is no recruiting blueprint left for the Pac in Southern California. So you probably go out there and you jump on San Diego State. Although I know that they want to go to the Pac-12, but again, right. Yeah. The two. Well, the two, they're not going anywhere though. They're still there. They're still there. And I get what you're saying. But wait, so what's the other one? Are you talking about like Texas? I guess you're talking Texas here being the second one or whatever. But they're not going to continue. They're not going to stop getting that talent. That's the whole thing. I think if anything, Houston's close enough that if they're already there in your conference if you're the Big 12, right? Yeah, I figured that's what you're talking about. They're already in the Big 12. They're going to jump and start getting some of that talent that they're going to get it before a Tulane would. And again, the bottom line is that you don't want to pay for that. You don't want to pay for that if you are the rest of the Big 12. If you're West Virginia, if you hear Coos talking and you were just said you were on the Golden Blue Dude, they talk like they're, the poorest of the poor when they're in a power conference now, right? It's a bunch of BS, and they're always in the NCAA tournament. They just have a bad coach out there. It wouldn't help West Virginia that much. UCF, sure. Again, yeah, and I wouldn't worry about UCF at all because of the fact that, we're talking about that's a rich school. They got money. They have the largest student body in the country, the whole point is that none of these schools are going to give up the money that it's going to take to bring in Fresno or any of these schools, Tulane even, none of them. SMU's right there in Texas. It wouldn't be a big deal for them, right? The Pac-12 is trying to, pull them over or whatever. But again, if it's not additive, it's what? It's dilutive, okay? As long as those are dilutive things, if you're the Big 12, you don't have to make that move. You don't have to make that move. In fact, you sit and you wait for Arizona to jump. Whenever I was just listening to, like I said, I watched that Locked On Big 12. You ought to probably check that out. Michael Luke from Locked On Wildcats. And even he was saying a lot of the same things that what we're talking about here is that everything that you continue to hear from guys like Canzano and Wilner and those other guys that are all these Pac-12 homers, even though they're supposed to be respected journalists that are telling the truth, none of it is the truth. And none of the stuff that, they got Fresno all in a freaking in a froth about joining the Big 12. It's happening. It's happening. There's one guy on Twitter that, man, he makes me laugh. He's just dead set on that it's about football. And it's not about football. It is, it's all about football, but it's not about whether you can play or not. And Fresno's okay, but they're not moving the needle. Nobody's clamoring to watch that football team. And that's the other thing I would say. Even with Tulane being so much better last year and beating USC, beating Kansas State, nobody cares about those guys. Nobody cares about San Diego State. Nobody cares about Fresno State. Nobody cares about SMU. Nobody cares about SMU, and they're in the heart of Dallas, and nobody cares about them. Nobody's. But if you get the Four Corner schools, you think you're going to want to watch Coach Prime's Buffaloes every weekend? Yep. Even if right away they're not, Ty was saying on his show yesterday, to be careful what you're expecting from the Buffaloes this year. And I would tend to temper expectations. I feel like they're going to win 8 games or so at least. But that being said, even if they win 5 or 6, that's still an improvement over what they were a year ago at 1-11. And and he's recruiting at an elite level. They have elite level coaches all around their staff. They're going to win at some point. If you get to the Big 12, it's only going to help. But that, no matter what, he moves the needle in terms of what you're looking at, what people want to see. He is must-see TV. People tune in. Millions of people a day watch his stuff on YouTube because they have their own production stuff that's going on with his son. So that moves the needle. If you have a school like Utah, although I've seen some stuff that they may not even be like the one, I don't believe some of it that I'm hearing that you would go with San Diego State before Utah or anything. I don't buy that at all. Utah has won the last 2 Pac-12 championships. They're a powerhouse football program. Plus you get to renew the holy war within the Big 12. That's big. And one thing that I've read that keeps popping back in my head every time you start thinking about this realignment stuff. What sells? It's not the market they're after. Dennis Dodd said this in one of his articles a few weeks ago. It's not the market that they're after. What matters are the rivalries. Those move the needle. Those are what brings viewers in, which is what brings money in. Okay, it's all about money, but it's all about those rivalries that are going to do that. Yeah, I think that if you're not a Power 5 school, and that's the only metric that I would use at this point, talking about that, Laura, that's a great point. The only metric I'm using when it comes to that stuff is, are you a Power 5 program now? Because I'm going to ask you what you think on this. And Laura, I know you know what's going on there in Lubbock. Would the administration there and Kirby Hocutt and all those guys, would they want to add an SDSU to the program if it's going to come out of the pocket of Texas Tech? You think they want to do that? There's no way. I'll let you answer, but I'm going to say I know the answer too. And I know Okie Light is going to say the same thing, and I know Baylor's going to say the same thing, and I know that all of them, Iowa State, none of them, West Virginia for sure, if you listen to Coos, they're going to say, hell no, we're not paying them out of our pocket. And ESPN is not going to pay. So what? They're just going to show up and not get paid? It's not going to happen. So unless it does come to that, that's the whole thing, is that you're not just going to add schools for the sake of doing it. They're good right now at 12 in better shape, than what they would be. Now, do I feel like they need to add those 4 schools? Absolutely. If you can, you need to get them. You do. If you can. If not, then stand pat and see what happens with basketball coming up. Go ahead and continue doing what you're doing, because no matter what happens in the next year, we know there's going to be a lot of movement. Believe me, there's no way that the Pac-12 stays together over the long haul. And that's what Michael Luke was talking about. And he said the same thing. Look, the second Oregon and Washington jump, or Cal and Stanford jump, if one of them was to, it's over. It's over. They are no longer a Power 5 conference. So what's the point? And none of them are going to be okay with the streaming only. And I think that streaming has a place in sports. I don't think it's near to the point now where that's where it's going to be. Yeah, listen, and that's fine, because they probably are the third most. And I know a lot of people would tell you the ACC, just because of how long that media deal is. But I think that I'm going to say this again, if ESPN holds Florida State and Clemson at that number in that conference for the next 13 years, they will have destroyed their own product. So there's no way they do that. I don't see that happening. I think that you would be better off paying 4 schools. And I was talking about Miami, Clemson, Florida State in that video that I did a few days back. But to be honest with you, you throw Carolina in there, I would pay all 4 of them. Come out of your pocket and continue to invest in your own product, because you still have it for another 13 years. And you would still get more teams into the playoff. That was one of the things I wanted to talk about with some of those guys. The grumblings in the ACC are hurtful. Bottom line, one thing I would say about, and this is something I've been seeing about the ACC, a lot of the stuff that's going on there, their conference, that television deal isn't great, but it gets better the longer it goes. So they're definitely going to continue to be on par because even now they're at 17 million, but they're getting closer to like 40 now. That's not going to be the 50 that the Big 12 gets, but it's not going to be a ton behind. The problem is that when you're talking about Florida State and Clemson, it's one thing. And it's like Michael Alford said, he's the AD for Florida State. He was talking about, we can deal with 10 or 15 million behind, but 30 million, and it could even be more than that. Once the 12 team playoff starts, the money's going to boom even more. It's going to boom even more. So the payouts for these SEC and Big Ten schools are going to be astronomical. That's why I feel like if you went ahead and you got them up to that level where they are at competition wise, if you're talking Clemson, Florida State, even Carolina and Miami is they're not going to sit on their hands and not win, right? So if you help them stay competitive, then you can assure yourself of at least one team every year coming from that conference, because you remain a Power 5 or Power 4 or whatever. But you're definitely going to get one team. You might get 2. I feel the same about the Big 12. I think that they can get one team, and they might get 2. ESPN owns a large portion of that conference as well. You keep the Big 10 out of Florida, by keeping those 2 schools and keeping them happy. And then, because if they go into the SEC, then maybe they get out. But then all of a sudden now the ACC is no longer a power conference either. I feel like you're torpedoing your own product that you have at razor slim margins. You're making so much money on that. It's just crazy. Yeah. That's what I'm trying to say. You keep that thing together, and even if it costs you an extra $100 million or whatever a year, you know, they were talking about they're going to pay 100 million to the Pac-12. They don't even want to pay that, right? I don't think they want it at all. And at some point, maybe they pull that off the table too. But that's what I would do: is take that 100 million and give it to those 4 schools to keep them in the ACC. Then you're guaranteed you might get up to 4 schools out of the SEC in the playoff. Then you get another 2 to 3 more out of the Big 12 and the ACC. And now you got what, 7 schools in that college football playoff? Yeah. No. No, of course not. Yeah. Yeah, that ship's already sailed, Laura. That's the only thing. I would just say, and like I said, it seems to make sense to me. I don't know. Nobody else is really saying it though, but I just maybe I'm ahead of my time on that. I don't know. I just feel like if I'm ESPN, I would rather than paying for a crappy product in the Pac-12 that I know is about to die, because the second that the offer comes from the Big Ten, Oregon and Washington are gone. So I would be, if I'm ESPN, I would actually be trying to help the Big 12 get those 4 corner schools, and I would be pulling my offer from the Pac-12, offering it, throwing that in to sweeten the pot, to for the ACC. I'm not saying tear up the contract. I'm saying do something, because they have leverage, and people keep talking about they have all the leverage in the ACC. They kind of do, but you think if they hold them in that conference for the next 13 years and paying them to stay that far behind, that you're going to get any of those teams in the SEC? No way. They would go to the Big Ten after that just to piss them off. They would, because they're not happy. So while they may have the contract is in their favor, as far as getting out of it, and then of course you have the granted rights that the ACC doesn't have to allow that. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why it's going to make it really hard for any of those teams to leave the ACC. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't make it better if you're the ACC and ESPN. That's all I've been trying to say about that. It's just, to me, it makes zero sense to me to torpedo your own product, taking your own business and just saying, screw it. We got 13 years that we can make money on it, Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. See, and again, because let's say even if they got lucky and they all went to the SEC, which probably wouldn't happen, but now you're looking at it in terms of, okay, now that product is trashed. It's no longer going to be in the CFP, and you're still only going to get 4, maybe 4 out of the SECs, more likely 3. Guaranteed you're going to have at least that many coming out of, you would have 3 to 4 still coming out of the SEC. Then you get 1 or 2 out of the ACC, 1 or 2 out of the Big 12. I mean, you could theoretically you could get as many as 8, but I would figure you're going to get at minimum most of your 6 teams in the college football playoff. That pays out more money too. So, that's, to me, if you're trying to play the long game here, then play the long game and pay it up, All right. We can get off of that. Just food for thought, though. All right. So tell me what you guys were thinking about the SEC schedule stuff, or what we've seen from Ross Dellinger at Sports Illustrated. Happy about that? You like the idea of Florida being on the every year schedule? I was thinking regionally at first. I do like it. And especially we've been doing some collaboration with some of those Florida guys on there. But what is this? Hey, what's up, Chris? I don't know if I've seen you in here before. Thanks for coming to the show. Yeah, well, how do you balance that? Yeah, I think I think you get more viewership if, well, just for instance, I mean, at least two of those schools aren't probably going to be that competitive in the SEC. They might be a little more competitive in the Big Ten. So I feel like you're going to get more views on a school in the ACC that's because at the end of the day, and think about it. Last year, you had North Carolina was right up there in contention for most of the season, right? They got Drake May. They're going to be right there again this year. Miami wasn't, but they should get there with the way they're recruiting Mario Cristobal and all the money they're dumping into the program. Then you had Florida State, who they lost 3 games, in a row in that early middle part of the season, but then they got really hot towards the end of the year, right? Clemson ends up winning the conference still, but they had a lot of close games in there. That conference was not decided until late in the year, right? It wasn't. The year before that, Pitt was in there and won the conference. That was the first time Clemson hadn't won it in a long time. Yeah. You love having one traditional SEC team on the annual list. Yes. Looking at Texas annual list, yeah. Yeah, and I like that too. OU Bama viewers versus Clemson FSU. Yeah, and again, that's where I feel like him on that. You kind of have to look at it in terms of you're going to get a lot of people watching those schools, right? Clemson, FSU, or whoever you get in there. But you've killed the rest of that conference. Whereas every weekend, the ACC, whether you root for NC State or Wake Forest or whoever, you're still watching Clemson and you're still going to watch Florida State, right? They've won 24 out of the last 32 conference championships. James, going to this. Yeah, I love this one too. I'm excited about the Florida one. Oklahoma has it's kind of a rivalry as it is, and you think about it, I hate talking about the national championship game with Sam Bradford when he was quarterback. I felt like they should have won that. But then, look at when they played them in the Cotton Bowl a few years ago, and, you got Dan Mullen out there, making excuses for the ass whipping they took. You know what I mean? That kind of stuff. It's fun because now you're going to get that banter every year. And I got to tell you, I like Oklahoma's coach a lot more than I like Billy Napier. Group of 5 Billy. And that's going to really piss off F is for Fanatics and High Top. But that's okay. More viewers. It'll be fun. Yeah. ACC would have gotten 2 teams in. SEC would have gotten 3. Yeah. Big 12. Yeah. The power rankings, the way that the power rankings were working out, I don't think Texas would have, though, because they ended up with what? 5 losses total, but they had 4. They weren't getting in. But I think the Big 12 would have definitely had the 2. They would have for sure had the 2 in also. I think you would have had 4. So that's 7. They would have had 7 this season if it was a 12 team set up that way. You're right. What about Clemson every year? They'd be, to play them if they were in the SEC? Is that what you're saying, Hawaii Nice? Good to see you back, man. Yeah, they would have been on the bubble maybe, except for, but they kept losing games when they kept losing those games. I don't see that they would have gotten in because they blew it. Once they lost to TCU towards the end of the season, I think that was it for them. They would have been on the bubble because of beating up on Kansas State the way they did. But when they lost that game to TCU, I think that would have ended them. And look, I want to see Texas finally do something before I listen to the, crap about, how great they are. I got to tell you. Horns down, by the way. Come on. I know I'll keep Laura on that one. Is the horns down stuff. She hates Texas too. Yeah, and what did everybody kind of think about that stuff with all this stuff with these basketball coaches is kind of crazy, right? I mean, this isn't a basketball show, but being a Big 12 show, I don't know what in the hell was going on with Chris Beard and his staff, because Mark was part of that staff too, and they're a bunch of knuckleheads, it looks like to me. Clemson versus OUBV and his old head coach. Yeah, if they were in the SEC, I could see that. I would also like to see that like in the playoff setting, though. I think as it is right now, the SEC schedule is going to be a freaking gauntlet. Lubbock makes them go crazy. I could see that. Flatlands of Lubbock out there. I get it. Kind of made me crazy. But I agree with you on this Hawaiian Ice and stuff. I'd rather probably see them in the playoff. I think that'd be more fun there. Love the 3 permanent teams. Recruiting dreams. KC is producing a lot of 5-star players. Same with Florida. Yeah, and I think that the one thing about Florida, and I brought it up, in that other show with Ty on Around the Table Sports yesterday, that I was like, well, I think it helps with their recruiting in Florida. But they said, they're already recruiting Florida because Venables already has a pipeline there. But I think also it doesn't hurt anything as far as recruiting there. But I do feel like just getting into the SEC has opened these pipelines up. And if you look at, a lot of people are a little freaked out right now. And a lot of people are a little freaked out right now about the fact that Oklahoma hasn't already gotten a bunch of commitments for, first of all, don't freak out about that. What I've been saying is, you know why they don't have a bunch of commitments yet? Because none of those high 4 and 5-star guys are committed yet. And they're all still in play for Oklahoma. When's the last time you saw that, particularly on the defensive side? What do I think about UCF? I think that they're a problem for the Big 12. I think they're a problem for the Big 12. They're recruiting in highly fertile recruiting grounds. They have a very large fan base. Yeah. Yes, I would agree with that. I could see that happening easy. Even the first, is there a 2-loss national champion yet? Because I don't think there is. There's no 2-loss team has ever got there. About playing UCF this year. Yeah, I think that UCF's Oklahoma should win that one because it's in Norman, first off. And I also think they might struggle a bit their first season in the Big 12. They might be one of the upper tier teams, but I feel like I expect that Kansas State is going to be very good. I think that you got to watch out for Kansas and Texas Tech. What Joey McGuire is doing in Lubbock is something else. I think they're right there. And then I think that Oklahoma and Texas are both geared up to beat the crap out of the rest of this conference this season. Now, whether or not that's allowed to happen or not is another story. We don't have to get into all that, but I don't know. I feel like first season in, and there's a lot of this stuff kind of brewing, and really Texas and Oklahoma don't have the hardest schedule. That's one of the tougher games. Their toughest game, both teams' toughest game, is the Red River, right? Texas leaves the state twice this season. Oklahoma leaves Oklahoma 3 times. And one of those times is for the Red River, and it's basically Oklahoma South, right? So, yes. June and July those are the big months. That's when you want them. And look, if you're looking at, everybody's talking about David Stone. If you're going to get him, if you're going to get David Stone, you're going to be waiting until June and July. And the good news is both of those coaches that were recruiting him to Michigan State are gone. So while I would tell you that Coach Prime is an issue in this, and he's in there, he's in the mix with him now. It's not a guarantee for Stone, but it sounds Waneri is another big 5-star defensive tackle. He's right there. He's got the crystal balls. That doesn't necessarily mean anything either, but it looks like he's on his way. His His teammate was Caden Green, who's already a Sooner. So I could see that happening. It makes sense. But yeah, do you think in the SEC well, at least every other year, but not on the yearly basis, they won't? What it looks like and Dellinger, I would tell you, is he didn't just pull this out of nowhere. He probably had a list sitting in front of him that came right from the SEC offices, because Saban actually, for him to like be upset, yeah. So yeah, they're going to play them every other year though, and this is what I really like about that schedule. I said it on the video earlier. If you didn't see that one already, Hawaii Nice, go check it out after the show. Obviously, they've got it's just talking about that 3-6-6 schedule. I love that schedule because no matter who your yearly teams are that you play, you're going to get to play everybody in the conference in a 2-year stretch. So you're going to play Alabama every other year. And then every 4 years, you will have played in every venue in the entire conference, which right now, there's the way that the division set up and however they do it. A lot of schools, I mean, I don't think A&M has played everybody in everybody else's stadium since they've been in the conference. I could be wrong on that. Don't kill me on it if I am. But I know they've been in the league for 11 years now, and there's a lot that maybe they were there once. You know what I mean? So it's a tough, the way they've got it set up now, it's going to be tough. We're definitely getting Missouri annually. Yeah, of course. Now, the one thing I would say about this is that you've got, and I didn't realize this before. I thought it was just everybody plays 2 upper half tier teams and 1 lower half. There was no way that would have ever worked out. So if you're the lower 8, so if you had they chalked it up on whoever had the most wins over the last 10 years. So you would be in the top 8 or the bottom 8, right? If you're a bottom 8, you get 2 bottom 8 teams on your rival list plus 1 top 8 team. If you're a top 8, you get 2 top 8, 1 bottom 8. That makes sense. Yeah, Georgia hasn't been to College Station. Stone is OU's with 1 area. Right. Hey, man, and that would be huge. You get 2 5-star defensive tackles that, Coach Bates, Todd Bates can coach up. I mean, you realize there's never been a defensive tackle that he's coached, whether he was at HBCU level on up, that hasn't been all conference first team at least once. And he's got like 9 All-Americans. So, yeah. Yeah, it's but I think, someone told me Arkansas. Nope. That's according to what, and see, you definitely need to go and check out that video after we get done here, Hawaii Nice. But it's not going to be Arkansas. They're going to, according to what Sports Illustrated was saying, and like I'm saying, I feel like that guy's probably had a list straight from the SEC office. This is what our, tentative deal is. It was a projection on his part. I think he's got it right. Ross Dellinger from Sports Illustrated, but he has Texas. I can throw that up there for you guys. Give me just 1 second. Well, Texas is actually going to be playing Arkansas every year in A&M, whereas you have, oops. Let me just download this and I can pull it right back over there. They're going to be playing Texas A&M and Oklahoma, obviously, every year, and then they're going to get Arkansas. That was an old Southwest Conference rivalry for them, and I think Jerry Jones probably has something to do with that also. So that's my thoughts on that. I would feel like that's probably going to happen, but let me throw that schedule up there. It's loading. So yeah, that's almost definitely going to happen. And then you have, yeah, and that's kind of right there. It's that the rivalry was never really built because they weren't really they've never really played that much against each other, right? I mean, I don't really ever really remember Oklahoma's rivals. It's like what James was saying it's always been Texas. The other major one was Nebraska, back in those days. Yeah, they've only played them once or twice. So here we go on that. Let me knock down that comment real quick. Here's your schedule. Projected, of course. But as I said, I feel like it seems like Nick Saban probably would not be like complaining over this schedule if he didn't agree that it was true, if that it was real. You know. Yeah, 15 times, James says. Yeah. That sounds about right. Probably in bowl games, a lot of them too, Cotton Bowl or something like that. And that's where, see, back in the days of the Big Eight in the Southwest Conference, they were playing against each other in the Cotton Bowl a lot. But as you can see, yeah, I remember that. And didn't they play them in yeah, I saw that, Kim. Let me just run over this for just a second. But you're looking at, obviously, A&M, they're going to probably obviously they're keeping the Texas game. They did not want to play Oklahoma too. I don't necessarily blame them for that. You're still going to get them every other year. But their record against OU is about like what it is against Texas. I mean, that's 2 losses. So they don't want to do that every year. But they're going to get LSU. They have built some type of rivalry there with them. And then Mississippi State, they had it was LSU and Mississippi State that had that, or was it? It was LSU A&M that had that 6 overtime game, right? Then, yeah, what Saban's complaining about is that he keeps his rivals LSU. These two, obviously Tennessee and Auburn ain't going anywhere. The LSU one, it's become a big rivalry. I don't know why he would even have expected that. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, this is what you're looking at. And to me, I would feel like you're probably looking at, I mean, if you start looking at some of these, they make sense. Florida, obviously, they're going to play Georgia every year, right? They've built some kind of a rivalry, I guess, with South Carolina, but I feel like the OU thing is good for them. I think that's I know that those guys that are fans of Florida, they're kind of agreeing with it as well, that they're excited about that game. Georgia's always going to play Auburn. It's the oldest rivalry in the South. That's happening every year. They're always going to play Florida. That's the world's largest cocktail party. That's not stopping anytime soon. Kentucky, they may have gotten a break there. Although you've got another Stoops down there that's been doing a really good job. Mark's done a great job down there. They're probably never going to be on the level of either of these other 2 programs, but I mean, that's a nice game. Then Auburn, yes, you're always going to have Alabama. And if I'm complaining, it's probably because I'm Auburn and I have to deal with these 2 dudes all the time, although they do get Vandy to kind of soften that up a little bit. What Nick Saban was complaining about was the fact that Tennessee is thrown in that bottom tier because the last 10 years they haven't been that good. And he was mad because, of course, he got beat by Tennessee last time, but it was the first time in 15 years. So, I mean, I'm not exactly worried about Nick Saban being upset about that, to be honest with you. But yeah, let me get back into the comments. I'll pop up some more of this stuff. Yeah, he said only about 15 times. That sounds about right. I don't ever really think of them, and I mean, I've been watching them in my whole life, and I don't really remember Arkansas games. Really. Played Cincinnati when Brian Kelly was there. Yep. And they played that didn't they play that at Bengal Stadium? I did just see that too, Kim. And look, see, last year when everybody was saying all this stupid stuff about firing Todd Bates, that he wasn't a good recruiter. The Oklahoma staff is in rooms that they weren't in for the last 10 or 15 years. They are in rooms they were never in. Are you going to lose some to Larry Johnson in Ohio State? Yes, he's the godfather of defensive line coaches in the country. Right? Are you going to lose some to Alabama? Yeah. And, again, why do you think that is? Because they've been winning and winning and winning. Are you going to lose some to Georgia? Right? You're going to lose some to the SEC, period. Now, because of the fact, though, but look at where Clemson was getting a lot of those guys, those dudes that were getting those dudes are now in Oklahoma. So you're going to start getting them too. And Stoney, I feel like they should get David Stone. I know that even, we're getting a helpful hand from an old Sooner there on this recruitment. If they lose him, Gerald McCoy has been trying to help with that. But if they lose him, I wouldn't be necessarily surprised because it's Coach Prime. And the reason I wouldn't be that surprised is what I've been hearing a lot of is which his parents do not want him to stay in Oklahoma for whatever reason. I guess he's been getting that some of the crowd that he's run around with, they're not happy about or something like that. That's the word out there. But I hope that that's not the case. Yeah, that'd be cool. They're going to play them LSU, USC, and yeah, I could see it would definitely be in probably the college football playoff. I'd like to see that too. Yeah. That was a good game. Really good game. Rowdy. ATM and Bama get after it every year and call it the player purchase rivalry. Yeah. The $30 million game. Yes. I think that Mark Stoops has a job that you should never leave. They keep giving him raises, and he keeps not having to win 10 games. Yeah, I agree with that. McCroy is trying to become the godfather of D-line, right? McCoy's, yeah. Dude, I love Gerald, man. I want to get him on the show. I'm trying so hard to get him on the show. It hasn't happened yet. I really want to get him on though. If you guys know him, send him a tweet or something and tell him to come on the Hall of Fame show. Yeah, I think that those guys most of them are either going to the NFL. But yeah, he's the guys that would have gone to Clemson that would have played on that defensive line or at linebacker and stuff. You're going to start seeing those guys go to Oklahoma. Oklahoma is going to be a defensive power. They are. And they're going to continue to do well. I don't see any reason why they're not going to compete in the SEC. Is it harder? Absolutely. Are you going to see anybody win like what they did over that 6-year stretch in the Big 12? No, it's not going to happen. It's just too many good teams, right? Wow. That would be awesome. And but there's a bunch of 4 stars that are right there. I feel like all those top 10, 12 guys are in play, right? They're all in play. I do have high hopes for Jackson Arnold. I think he is a stud. Look, you don't win Player of the Year in high school for nothing. And he did that over, Dante. Why am I messing up his last name now? But even, and then the guy that's going to USC also, both of those quarterbacks, he beat both of them out. Plus Arch Manning was up for that. But if he's better, I mean, and I feel like the best 2 quarterbacks in the country were Arch. He won the Elite 11, and everything that was going on right there, none of those other guys were really close. Now Dante, he's going to UCLA. Why am I losing his last name? Off on the. Yeah. Hey, listen, that I keep hearing it might be a real thing. He's going to come on as a defensive analyst, I think, with the maybe as an analyst, because he's going to have a surgery. So I don't think he's going to be a coach right away. I know for sure he's having that. Yeah, Dante Moore. Thank you, Hank. man, I don't know why I was skipping that. If Arch or if I don't know, I think Arch. I was really surprised. I was going to get you guys' opinion about that too. I was surprised that they announced that that's a quarterback competition right away. Although I'm less surprised after I say that because I don't know that came from Sark as much as it came from the people that want Arch to play. But no, I think I've seen Dante Moore in person. I can tell you this. That kid is unbelievable. And he was the only one that really hung with Jackson during the Elite 11. They were saying 1A, 1A, a lot of the people that were out there. Jackson lit it up at Elite 11, lit it up. And he's taking his team to 3 state championship games out of 4 years in Texas in 6A ball, 1-1. I think that he's going to be amazing, just to answer that. If he's better than Dante Moore, holy crap. He should probably be playing right now, Now, I'm going to say I don't really want that to happen. I don't want to rush him into play. But I feel like he's going to be really good. Georgia and Bama both lost their end-of-the-year Citadel games. What? Moore has a monster arm. Yeah, and here's what I like about his arm, Hank. It's not just that it's big. It's that, first off, he throws people open, and there's arm strength and there's arm talent. This kid has arm talent. Plus, he's just a gamer. When I was in San Antonio watching the All-American Bowl, and he had 4 touchdowns in the first half, and 2 of them he had guys breathing down his neck. And he stood in there looking down the barrel of the gun and threw bullets that only his receiver was going to catch. And one of them, you had Samuel Omosio, barreling down and popped him at the end of that. And he made it. And he made a throw. And by the way, Samuel looked amazing in that game. And I'm going to say this over and over again until people listen. Makari Vickers is unbelievable. That kid is going to cut off half of the freaking field at some point. When he told me on the show that day that he thought that he was going to be a freshman All-American, that's his goal, I don't doubt that at all. I don't doubt it at all. I don't know how much time he's going to get as being the starter because I think with the guy, you've got Woody coming back. You've got the kid coming in from junior college. But these are all good things to have. You're going to see a lot of him in nickel coverage, I would think. I think that he could play that. They did so well with the transfer portal and with recruiting. I could see that, right? Yeah, that arm touch, he's got strength. He can throw it, but he's accurate. And on top of that, he doesn't get rattled with pressure so much, is what I was getting at. He's playing All-Americans, and he lit it up. Hawkins signing early for recruiting. I don't know, man. And I tell you, that's where one of those that Kim, PG, and those guys, they have a really good handle on what's going on in this recruiting game. PG gets a lot of these guys to come on his show. How he does it, I'm not sure. But I think that here's what I like about Michael Hawkins. His dad and Jeff Lebby are best friends. They were in the same recruiting class at Oklahoma. So I feel like he's up there. But I could also see him not coming to Oklahoma, and only for the reason is because he's going to have to sit a while if he does, right? If you believe in Jackson Arnold, you know that he's going to have to sit a while. He's also really tight with Kendall Briles at TCU, right? That's Lebby's brother-in-law. I could see that happening as well. I also know that there's a couple of other guys that Oklahoma may be targeting over him. I was actually surprised to see him on that list there. But I do think that he could end up there. He could, just because of the fact of what we were talking about. Yeah, dude, the seatbelt. He's the man. Yeah, the toughness of the new schedule. It's good. This is why you can see a 3-loss team getting into the playoff because of the fact if you go, let's say you lose 3, but 2 of those losses are to top 10 teams or top 15 teams anyway. you know, and then you got a couple of wins over top 10, top 15 teams because you're going to have a bunch of them in there. Then it's going to happen. Yeah. Yeah. When did he say that? Was it today? Huh. I like it. I didn't see him today, so if that's the case, I'm gonna have to go watch it. That means that something happened at Elite Junior Day over the weekend. Which, man, they had those kids that were there was pretty awesome. Yeah, yeah, and I would agree with you on that. I think that if he wants to come to Oklahoma, he better take the offer, because you got that kid out of Midland Lee. They were talking about him on Ty's show, and then the kid from Maryland. Both of them are in front of him as far as rankings are concerned. But I know this. I know a kid that goes to school at Frisco Emerson with Hawkins. He's going to be his left tackle, and they said he's insane good. So, for what that's worth. And that kid is the left tackle is going to be insane good too. He's just a sophomore and he's already going to be starting. So yeah. Yeah, there's a kid from Philly. Yep, I saw that kid too. Look, there's a lot of kids out there. So yeah, I think that you're kind of right in that if he wants to do that, he needs to get it done. Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's where your Waneri thing came in. Again, I wouldn't trust all these crystal balls. It depends on where they come from. Parker and Brandon's crystal balls aren't really the same as Wiltfong's. Let's just put it that way. Okay. So I wouldn't go crazy on that. What else? Yeah, as far as recruiting is concerned, I mean, I keep an eye on it, and we'll talk a lot more about that when June and July get here. But I do feel like that's such a moving target for me, and there's so much other stuff that's going on. I know PG and Jay from Unfair Sports, they do an amazing job at that. If you guys aren't already subscribers to their show, you should be, because they keep their eyes on that recruiting. I like to look at more of a national scope of things. I'm definitely an OU creator, and I love OU, and I'll definitely get into some of that. But some of these other things are a little more interesting to me than just the early stages of recruiting. We're talking about March. You know what I mean? It's probably going to be June and July. Like I think it was Hank that said that a little while ago, or maybe James, to where you start getting these commits that, crystal balls are great, but I don't trust those guys. You know what I mean? And a lot of the times they're wrong. So I just feel like the more I hear about that kind of stuff, I mean, it's great for putting out stuff on a daily basis, but it's a lot of stuff that, yeah, I don't know. I'll definitely get a lot more into that. There's a lot of national things, that storylines that are going that I'm going to probably follow a lot more. I'm still a Big 12 guy. And I love the SEC stuff. I've been getting into a lot more SEC. I've been watching a lot more of their creators talk and what they're talking about in that conference, because that's where OU's headed. I'm interested to see what happens with the Pac-12. I think that they're dead. I think that they're dead in the water, but yeah, and I don't trust anything but the signature either. So I don't put a huge emphasis on recruiting rankings and where they are and stuff like that until late in the year. I mean, even after the season's almost over, is because none of it matters until then. Just like what you just said, Hank. When they sign to come, they have a letter of intent, and that won't be till at least the first signing day in December. Then until then, it's all speculation, right? Even if they commit, it's still all speculation. Not everybody's like PJ Adebawari, which is another guy everybody should be super excited about. Did you see what his brother did at that? Who was talking about that to me the other day? Did you see what his brother did? Was that you, Hank? He ran like a 4.4 from a defensive lineman, went to Northwestern. Holy crap. And he's coming in. I think that he plays right away. I know Drew disagreed with me on that. I think he plays right away. I don't see why you wouldn't. Get bigger basketball TV money than football. Oh, 0%. 0%. They'll get a lot of money. They'll get a lot of money. Definitely a sports rabbit hole. Yeah, and I mean, I like a lot of things. So, I mean, some people are cut out for that to just sit and look on these boards, and I hate message boards on freaking 247 and those other, I just hate those things. I think people are nuts. So I don't like doing that. Yeah, 448. He had 280 pounds. That guy's a monster. And look, and I think PJ is going to be better, you know. So I feel like PJ is going to play. Yeah. What are we talking about? Yeah, I don't. As far as these odds that they get a bigger basketball tilt, probably not, but it could be pretty close to it. I think no matter what, though, the straw that stirs the drink is football. Period. I mean, college football is number two as far as money to the NFL. That's it. The NBA doesn't touch college football. So yeah, they're gonna get the four. They're gonna get the four corner schools. That'll help with that. And I feel like that's gonna help the basketball too. Yeah. Are that dude is a stud, man. Yeah, Jay said it yesterday. He said what? He said what about not trusting anything but the signature? Yeah, and you can't. You can't. I don't. It's like I said, that I'm going to talk some recruiting, and if I had the guys that PG gets on his show all the time, I would do it all the time. I just feel like that's one of those deals where unless you're talking to them and you know what they're doing, it doesn't really matter. Hmm. I agree with that. I think that PJ might be. I think by the end of the year, he's getting the lion's share of the snaps. I think he is on one of those sides. Yeah, PJ's brother Jay. Yes. Yeah. No, he's a 5-star. Williams Waneri. He's crystal balled. He's crystal balled to come to Oklahoma, and he's got Caden Green was his teammate in high school, and he's already there. Yeah. So Waneri is that one's one of the guys you pretty much got to expect to be in the Oklahoma camp. He hasn't committed, but I think that that crystal ball looks pretty good. They've got a lot of these guys that are looking like the defensive line shouldn't be. I mean, even if you did miss out, and I hope they get stoned, I think that they should get stoned by that. When Gerald McCoy is recruiting you, you got to have a pretty good feeling about that, right? And you're an Oklahoma kid. He's always wearing an Oklahoma hat, always throwing the horns down, you know. Which let's throw them down just to do that. So I feel like that's a possibility for sure, guys. I am going to call that. I mean, I know, and I apologize for being late today. It was a long day. Have some stuff going on. We're gonna definitely. I'm not positive which day we're looking at yet, but we're gonna have another live this week. I will announce it, and for sure we're gonna have on there. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. No, Xavier Robinson. Uh-huh. Coach is good. He's been going through some stuff. He runs a nonprofit organization for developmentally disabled, and they've been having some stuff going on the last couple of weeks with some of the residents there. So yeah, keep if you're the praying type, pray for him and pray for those folks. He does a fabulous job with that group of people, and they're in Hobbs, New Mexico. So gotta love that guy for that. We'll have him on later on this week as well. And but again, we're going to be doing a live probably towards the end of the week. May have High Top Sports on for sure. I don't know if that one will be on the live or not. We'll get Coach on there. I'll let him know you guys are thinking about it, but I appreciate that as well. And I will see you guys on the next one.